Hi, it's Travis White with the Persuasive Communication Tip of the Week. How cool is it to be President of the United States? Well, Teddy Roosevelt said the coolest thing about being President of the United States was that it provided a bully pulpit for him to speak from. And he could speak, and because he was president, a lot of people would listen. When he gave a speech, a lot of people would show up and they'd listen closely to what he had to say. So he could use that bully pulpit to persuade people, to move audiences, to move the electorate, to support causes, to support campaigns. Well, how bully is the bully pulpit? Well, it may not be as bully as maybe Teddy Roosevelt thought it was. In fact, some recent research by Frances Lee, an academic, who wrote a book in 2009 called Beyond Ideology. And she looked at presidential speeches and she looked at their effect on votes in the Senate. And what she found was that when a president speaks in favor of something, it activates his supporters, but it galvanizes his opponents. In fact, it almost provokes an immune response in some ways. So people who are in favor of the cause or the campaign will be motivated to some degree, but the opponents will be motivated to a much higher degree. And she looked at this in a variety of different presidential speeches and campaigns and so forth. One example I'll give is George Bush in 2004 had just won the election, and he famously said, I've earned some political capital here, I'm going to spend that capital, and one of the ways I'm going to spend that is on privatizing Social Security. So he spoke in 60 different cities. He had a campaign going on. He spoke in different cities to different audiences about the need to privatize Social Security. And the more he spoke, the less popular the measure became. And it was not because he was not a good speaker. He's a very good speaker. He has very good speechwriters, and he understands the rules of rhetoric and persuasion. But as he was speaking about this, it activated the opposition. Perhaps before, the opposition hadn't thought much about privatizing Social Security, but as he spoke more and more eloquently and more persuasively, it provoked an immune response, let's call it, in the opposition. So ultimately, that did not succeed. What does this have to do with you and your career and your organization? Well, sometimes if you speak in favor of things, office politics will be such that your opponents will automatically have that immune response. And do you have office politics in your office? I bet you do. And there are probably some people who support you, and there's probably some people who are in opposition to you. If you speak eloquently and persuasively about something, you may activate your supporters, but galvanize your opponents. Now, if you think that's the situation, and it's up to you to kind of judge that, then what should you do? Well, instead of speaking broadly and in big public venues and so forth, you might want to work behind the scenes. That is closed doors, bargaining sessions, get to know the opposition, understand their position, understand what they want, and understand how you might be able to reach a compromise solution. So sometimes speaking eloquently will actually make the idea that you're supporting less popular than it was before. It depends on the political situation, and only you can judge that within your organization. If it is a highly politicized organization, be careful about how you speak, how much you speak in public, how eloquently you speak in public, and think about working behind closed doors, working more privately in one-on-one, face-to-face kinds of meetings. That's a Persuasive Communication Tip of the Week. See you again next week.